Thank you for joining me. My name is Nola Simon, and I'm the host of the Hybrid Remote Center of Excellence. And I wanted to actually do a different sort of podcast because I actually am exploring the Google Notebook LM. So it's an AI function that actually creates a podcast that's honestly not real people. It's just AI. But the interesting thing is you can actually upload sources. So I've uploaded a Maclean's magazine interview with me, my LinkedIn profile, my website, several of the media articles that have been written about me, an interview that Anna Burgess-Yang did for me. She was actually a guest on my podcast. We did a whole exchange. And my coach, Carrie Twigg, actually quoted me in an article that she had written about leadership. So I've included all of those sources and uploaded that to this Google Notebook LM, and it's created a podcast, which is actually going to be the audio that you hear following. So it's an interesting experiment. I've done 100 episodes looking at various different topics, and I've actually done a solo episode really to promote my business and explain exactly what it is that I do for work. But it is really difficult to analyze your own skills and abilities and pull together your pieces and actually convey it in such a way that it truly advocates for yourself. You have to be really gifted to step outside of yourself to really highlight the impact of your work. And although I think that I'm fairly good at that, I think this is better. And it's actually really a cool use of AI. And I wanted to share it with you in its entirety. It's weird to listen to, like from my own perspective. And I've experimented with several different versions. The first one made me laugh because it picked up my hatred of the game Monopoly and gamification. I like gamification in certain aspects, but I really truly do hate Monopoly. And that made me laugh quite a lot. It's random in what it picks up. It actually made me tear up at one point because initially when I created my podcast, I called it the Janice Oasis. And then I realized that there's a whole bunch of other ways that people pronounce Janice. I say Janice. Some people say Janus. I'm not sure what's correct. Alexa would tell you that Janus is correct, and so I didn't necessarily like the pronunciation difference. But it actually pulled up on the symbolism and explained the symbolism behind the whole name, and that made me tear up because I'm like, I put so much thought into the fact that the Roman god has two faces, one looking towards the past, one looking towards the future, and it explained all of that. And I'm like, I'd completely forgotten how much I'd written about the symbolism behind that name, and it pulled it into the podcast, and that was really cool. So it didn't make it into the final version, but it did make me smile this morning. So nothing is ever truly wasted is really what I'm telling you. It will come back up in various different ways that you really didn't plan on it. Now that can be bad and good, but when it's actually pulling in work that you put out hoping that it would have an impact and it comes up later, that's meaningful, it's touching, it's validating, and so it's also truly very interesting. Again, you can put in all kinds of different stuff into the Google Notebook LM and create your own podcast. Now that is super cool for anybody who actually doesn't have a podcast of their own. It's something that you could embed, send to people, put into like your email signature. It's really cool. So anyways, I've created a podcast since I have a podcast, and I hope you enjoy listening to it. I'd really like to understand your reaction to it, because do these voices put you on edge? Do you find it engaging? What do you like about it? What do you dislike about it? Where's the uncanny valley? What makes you feel weird? All of that reaction. Do you trust this? How does it make you feel, basically, is what I'm interested in, because I know how it made me feel, and I'm like, I feel bubbly. You can hear it in my voice. I feel bubbly and enthusiastic, but I don't know how it's making other people feel, and I'd really love to know what the reaction is on this. So anyways, enjoy.
Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're tackling something that I think a lot of people are thinking about these days.
Yeah, for sure.
building trust and leading effectively in this crazy new world of hybrid and remote work. We've got an expert with us today, and you might actually find that her perspectives resonate.
Oh, for sure.
With some of your own experiences.
Yeah.
So we're going to be exploring insights from Nola Simon. She's an internationally recognized consultant.
Right.
And she specializes in this area of hybrid and remote work.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt like there's a disconnect between
total.
what a company says their values are and how they actually operate?
Yeah.
Particularly when it comes to trust and flexibility in the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what we're going to be unpacking today.
Yeah, it's a common experience.
Yeah.
What I think is so fascinating about Simon's approach is that she really emphasizes a very fundamental shift in mindset. She doesn't just give you tips or tech solutions or something like that.
Yeah.
She challenges us to really redefine how we think about trust, especially in the context of hybrid and remote work, where so much feels uncertain and in flux.
Yeah. I love that she goes so deep into the human aspect of it all.
Oh, totally.
She references Rachel Botsman's definition of trust a lot, which is a confident relationship with the unknown.
Yeah.
What do you make of that definition?
I think it's brilliant because it really reframes trust as something that's dynamic, not just about predictability or control. It acknowledges that in today's work environment, things are constantly changing.
Yeah.
And that effective leadership really requires this ability to navigate ambiguity, not shy away from it. In fact, Simon even argues that traditional workplaces, with their rigid policies and constant surveillance, actually breed distrust.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That really resonates with me.
Yeah.
I've definitely worked in places where the policies seem designed to catch people doing something wrong instead of empowering them to do their best work.
Exactly.
Simon actually shares some personal stories about that too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She talks about the anxiety she felt due to inconsistent leave policies at a previous company, never quite knowing if taking time off to care for her children would be paid or not.
Oh, wow.
That kind of uncertainty really eats away at trust and makes you question the company's true commitment to their employees.
Yeah, and it's almost like those policies create this expectation that you have to prove you're working all the time, even when you're not. And I've heard that called performative work.
Yes.
Where employees feel pressured to constantly be on.
Totally.
Even to the point of burnout.
Exactly. And Simon experienced this firsthand. Really?
She shares this pretty harrowing story about getting into a serious car accident.
Oh, gosh.
Directly caused by exhaustion from overworking.
Wow.
And she was pushing herself to alleviate her employer's anxieties about her remote work performance.
Right.
So it's a really stark reminder of the very real human cost of a lack of trust and the pressure to constantly prove your worth.
Yeah, it's a powerful example of how a lack of trust can actually undermine productivity and well-being.
Totally.
Even if it's not always as dramatic as a car accident. So many people are struggling with burnout from this always-on culture.
For sure.
What are some of the other ways that this pressure manifests? Maybe in less obvious ways.
I think it can show up as presenteeism, where people are online but not truly engaged, or a fear of disconnecting even for short periods. It can lead to difficulty prioritizing and setting boundaries.
And ultimately, it just erodes creativity and innovation because people are so focused on proving they're working that they don't have the mental space to actually do their best work.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So how do we break free from this cycle? Simon talks about building trust, but how do we actually do that?
Yeah.
Especially when so many traditional workplace structures seem designed to do the opposite.
Yeah. I think Simon proposes this three-pronged approach. The first one is emphasizing the importance of truly valuing employees and upholding company values consistently. So it's about moving beyond lip service and demonstrating through actions that you trust your team. So this could mean things like offering flexible work arrangements without question, or prioritizing employee well-being, or providing opportunities for professional development.
So it's about walking the walk.
Yeah, exactly.
Not just talking the talk.
For sure.
What about her other suggestions?
So the second strategy focuses on empowering managers.
Okay.
Giving them the autonomy to make decisions and support their teams effectively.
Okay.
And this demonstrates trust in their leadership and helps create a more responsive and supportive work environment. Think about it.
Yeah.
If managers feel micromanaged and distrustful,
Yeah.
that attitude is going to trickle down to their team.
So it's like creating a culture of trust from the top down.
Totally.
What's the third piece of the puzzle?
Okay, so the third strategy is all about understanding what it actually means to be trustworthy.
Okay.
So this involves a degree of self-reflection, both on an individual and organizational level. Are you truly living up to your stated values? Are you modeling the behaviors you expect from others?
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that building trust is an ongoing process, not a one-time fix.
And not just checking a box. Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like there needs to be this pretty fundamental shift in how we approach leadership and workplace culture. Simon also talks about the difference between transparency and trust.
Yes.
Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
It seems like those two concepts are often used interchangeably.
Yeah, and that's a crucial distinction.
Yeah.
Transparency is about providing information and context, but it's not the same as trust.
Okay.
Simon argues that sometimes transparency can even be used to mask a lack of trust.
Interesting.
For example, if a company is constantly monitoring employees and sharing that data under the guise of transparency, it can actually create a more distrustful environment.
Because it feels like you're being watched and judged, even if you're doing everything right.
Totally.
It seems like real trust goes deeper than just sharing information.
Yeah, for sure.
It's about believing in people's intentions and capabilities. Speaking of believing in people. I know Simon is a big proponent of visionary leadership. I've always found that concept a little bit nebulous. What does it actually mean to be a visionary leader, especially in this context of remote and hybrid work?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think it's especially relevant now. Simon often quotes leadership coach Carrie Twigg, who says that leaders without vision are just managers.
Interesting.
So visionary leaders are able to look beyond the day-to-day tasks and inspire their team with a clear sense of purpose and direction. They're able to anticipate future challenges and opportunities, and they're willing to take risks and embrace change.
So it's not just about managing the status quo.
Exactly.
It's about guiding the team towards something bigger, even if that something is constantly evolving. I know Simon has a great story.
He does.
About how her own visionary leadership style led to this major breakthrough for her team.
Yes, she completely redefined her team's scope.
Wow.
Pushing beyond traditional boundaries. And this bold move, driven by her vision and trust in her team, actually led to a billion-dollar business relationship.
Wow.
It's a powerful example of what's possible when leaders have the courage to trust their intuition and empower their teams to achieve ambitious goals.
That's incredibly inspiring.
It is.
But how do these grand ideas about trust and vision actually translate into the nitty-gritty of designing a workplace, especially one that's increasingly hybrid or remote?
That's where Simon gets really practical. She outlines this framework for a trust-based approach to workplace design. And it centers around 3 key areas. First, she emphasizes the importance of clearly defined strategies, goals, and expectations for employees. This ensures that everyone understands how their individual work contributes to the company's overall vision.
And it reduces ambiguity.
It's about providing that clarity and direction, even when people are physically dispersed.
Totally.
What else does she recommend?
So Simon also highlights the importance of crafting authentic and consistent narratives around work. This means ensuring that the company's actions align with their stated values. It's about telling a cohesive story that resonates with employees and builds trust.
I imagine this is where the storytelling element comes in.
It is.
Can you elaborate on that a bit more? It seems like a powerful but potentially tricky tool.
Absolutely. Simon is a big believer in the power of storytelling to shape workplace culture. But she cautions against manipulative storytelling.
Right.
You can't just tell a good story.
Yeah.
Your actions have to back it up.
Right.
If there's a disconnect between the narrative and the reality, it actually erodes trust and creates cynicism.
So it's about being genuine and walking the walk. Exactly.
Yeah. What kind of stories do you think companies should be telling to foster a more trusting and human-centered work environment?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think it's something every organization needs to consider carefully.
Yeah.
It's about telling stories that celebrate individual contributions, highlight acts of trust and collaboration, and acknowledge challenges, honestly. It's about creating a narrative that resonates with employees' lived experiences and inspires them to be their best selves.
So it's not just about telling positive stories. It's about telling real stories.
Yeah.
That reflect the complexities of work and the human experience.
Exactly.
What are some other ways that organizations can foster a more trusting and human-centered work environment, especially in this evolving landscape of hybrid and remote work?
One crucial aspect is recognizing and accommodating the diverse needs of employees.
That makes sense, especially in a hybrid or remote setting where people are juggling different schedules and responsibilities.
Exactly. It's about offering flexibility, not just in terms of where people work, but also when and how they work.
So it's about trusting employees to manage their own time and workload effectively, rather than imposing rigid structures that might not work for everyone.
And it's also about creating a culture where people feel comfortable asking for what they need without fear of being judged or penalized.
That sense of psychological safety is so important because if people don't feel safe speaking up, then you're never going to truly know what's working and what's not.
Simon makes a really interesting point about the link between trust and adaptability.
I'm curious to hear more about that. How does trust enable adaptability in the workplace?
She argues that when there's a high level of trust, people are more willing to embrace change and experiment with new ways of working.
Because they know that they're not going to be punished for making mistakes or for trying something new that might not work out.
Exactly. And that willingness to experiment is essential for organizations to thrive in today's rapidly changing world.
It's about creating that environment of psychological safety where people feel empowered to take risks and innovate.
And to learn from their failures as well as their successes.
That growth mindset is so important, but it can be hard to cultivate in a culture that's obsessed with perfection.
Which is why trust is so fundamental, because it creates the space for people to be vulnerable, to admit when they don't know something, and to ask for help when they need it.
It's about recognizing that we're all learning and growing together, and that it's okay to not have all the answers.
And I think Simon's own career journey is a great example of this. She talks about how she transitioned from a traditional corporate role to becoming a hybrid remote work consultant.
So she was actually living and breathing these principles before she started advising others on them.
Exactly. And what's so inspiring about her story is that she was an early advocate for remote work within her own company, even when it wasn't widely accepted.
She was ahead of the curve, and she had to deal with a lot of pushback and skepticism along the way.
But she persevered because she believed in the power of flexible work to create a better balance between work and life.
And now she's using her experience to help other companies make that transition to a more human-centered way of working.
It's a great example of how we can all be agents of change within our own organizations and beyond.
And it's also a reminder that it's never too late to reinvent yourself and pursue a career that aligns with your values.
It's about being open to new possibilities and embracing the unknown with a confident relationship with the unknown, going back to that brilliant definition from Botsman.
And that's what Nola Simon is all about. She's a visionary leader who's helping us create a better future of work for everyone.
And I think her work is more relevant than ever as we continue to navigate the complexities of the hybrid remote work landscape.
So if you're looking for inspiration, guidance, and practical advice on how to build trust, foster vision, and create a more human-centered workplace, I highly recommend checking out Nola Simon's work.
You can find her on LinkedIn Substack and her podcast, The Hybrid Remote Center of Excellence.
And with that, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive. It's been a fascinating conversation, and I hope you've all gained some valuable insights into how to lead effectively and build trust in this new world of work.
I know I have.
Thanks for joining us.